Hey YouTube, welcome back to another Feral Druid video. Guys, in this one I want to get you ready for the War Within. I want to take you through different builds and talents and rotations and all that kind of stuff, as well as talk about stats and just the general feel of Feral Druid right now, how it's maybe differing from Dragonflight to the War Within. So we'll jump into that. Before we do, I want to give you a quick disclaimer. I am returning to the United Kingdom. I will be back in the UK the first week of September. So my first The War Within stream will be about the 5th of September. So if you don't see me for a couple weeks, don't think that I've quit or I'm not playing WoW or anything like that. I'm just doing 2 weeks traveling around Japan, and then I'll be back streaming in the UK. So streams will go back to normal. So look forward to that. But with that being said, let's jump into the video. Okay, so starting things off, I want to give you guys my TLDR and how Feral Druid's sort of changed from Dragonflight and how it's feeling. So there have been a few changes. The biggest one for me is the reduction in melee range. We now don't have as big of a melee range as we used to. This Astral Influence talent doesn't work for us anymore. We don't get that extended range, which you can absolutely feel. And for me, it's really horrible, especially with a lot of the dungeon design being very melee unfriendly. So keep that in mind. I'm really upset about that. I want to see Blizzard give us that back. Give us the extended range. Next thing I want to talk about is energy and combo points. So in Dragonflight, Feral Druid is rapid. There, you are swimming in combo points and energy. In the War Within, not so much. The reason for that, or one big reason for that, is they've changed how Predator works. So this was a talent that used to give us a Tiger Fury reset when any mob with a bleed died. They've changed it. It now just extends the duration of Tiger Fury, and you get some extra damage based on your haste, right? Which is pretty cool, actually. I do like that. But this means that Feral, now, we don't just have infinite Tiger Furies. We don't have this infinite pool of energy and increased damage when Tiger Fury is active. It's an indirect nerf to CI as well, because now the potency of that is not as strong if Tiger Fury isn't active as long. So keep that in mind. There are, knock-on effects from this. Generally speaking, I prefer the slower style of Feral. I think it's a good change, but it's going to feel pretty jarring for a lot of people, especially if you only started playing Feral in Dragonflight. The last thing I want to comment on in terms of the TLDR is that I don't really like the hero talents. I think that they are... Druid of the Claw especially is just, for me, there's just nothing to it. I'm very just sad with it. Wildstalker, it's growing on me. I found a really fun build, and we'll talk about that and get into that soon. So that's the TLDR of how Feral Druid is looking and feeling. I am enjoying it on beta right now, actually, and I am looking forward to playing it in Mythic Plus with a couple builds. Right now, there's good build viability. You can play Druid of the Claw or Wildstalker. Druid of the Claw is going to kind of be OP when we get to... No, I don't want to say OP, but it's definitely going to be the better one when we get to high-level content, because the defensive capabilities of Druid of the Claw are just so much better than Wildstalker. Healing's cool, reducing damage is better. So there is some good build variety going on, so that's a positive at least. And yeah, those are my thoughts on Feral right now. I'd say we're good. Our damage is good. Our utility is good. I'd say generally we're probably if you want to put it on a tier list, which I really don't, I'd put it middle of the pack, maybe a bit higher than middle of the pack, just barely. So that's the TLDR there. Another thing is that we are probably right now looking a little bit better than Balanced Druid, which is going to mean that we'll probably be taken to raid if you need Mark of the Wild. And if Guardian's bad, if Resto's bad, if Balance is bad, then Feral will be in. Yay! That's all it takes. That's all it takes. In terms of stats, so item level is going to be king, especially in the beginning of a new expansion where we're getting such a massive increase in item level. So agility is king. In terms of our secondary stats, we're going to want some combination of crit, haste, and mastery. And that's going to change as you get more crit. You're going to want less of that. You're going to want more of the others. You get more mastery. You're going to want more of the others, etc. So keep that in mind. Ultimately, I would say sim, use drop optimizers and stuff like that on raid bots, but all three of those are going to be very, very good for us. Especially right now, PI is really good on us because we're just doing so well with haste. So yeah, mastery affecting all of our periodic effects as well, including things like Moonfire and Adaptive Swarm and stuff. Like, they're all really, really good for us. Crit helping with our combo point generation, stuff like that. So really quite good. I would say just sim it, and that's the TLDR on stats. Next, I'll talk to you guys about hero talents, because I want to talk about these before we get into the main class tree, because it just kind of makes more sense. So we have Druid of the Claw, we have Wildstalker. If you haven't looked yet, what Druid of the Claw is doing is it is giving you this massive attack, this Ravage, right? And basically, it's an empowered bite that can proc from your auto attacks, or you can make it proc from your Tiger Fury at the beginning and at the end. So basically, you're just going to melee, auto attack, and you're going to get this improved bite. It's going to cleave everything around you, and it's going to, or around the target mob, and it's going to impact them all with a bleed as well. So it's kind of like Rampant Ferocity, but just applying a bleed effect. It also has some really good like defensive capabilities, giving you frenzied regen in cat form for energy is pretty cool. Also retaining some of your defensive strength from bear form when you shift back into cat. That's going to make us very tanky in a lot of stuff. So I'd like to see this in high keys. We might just be unkillable. This could be really, really strong. So that's how Druid of the Claw is playing currently. Again, I don't really super love this tree just because I find Ravage to be quite boring, as it's a talent we already have on the class tree or on the spec tree. I would have liked to have seen something actually heroic from this talent tree. So that's, you know, some people love this. For me, not so much. But if you do, go for it. Enjoy it. Have fun. Now, Wildstalker is more bleed-based. It's more about your periodic effects, and you actually have agency in being able to have an impact on this rotation. So, Thriving Growth is the main core of this hero talent. Your Rip and your Rake damage has a chance to spawn a vine on the target that just bleeds them and just ticks them for damage, and then it can jump around to other targets, and when they run out, or whenever you bite a target with a blood vine on, it will explode and burst for damage around them. So if you go around and you target mobs with vines on and you're biting them, you're going to get more damage out, which for me is a fun minigame, and I'm actually quite enjoying it. Now, this tree more emphasizes healing and increases healing done, healing received, that kind of stuff. It's obviously not going to be really as strong as like just core defenses that you'll get on Druid of the Claw tree. So Druid of the Claw might be better in maybe if you're progging the final boss of the raid tier on Mythic, or you're doing high Mythic plus, you know, world first Mythic plus kind of stuff, then Druid of the Claw might end up just being better, just for that. But Wildstalker, to me right now, is the more fun thing to play. So how do these hero talents impact our builds and our rotations? So right now there's a little bit of build variance, because obviously there's going to be certain talents which are going to go well with Druid of the Claw, and certain talents that go well with Wildstalker. Okay, so let's get into the discussion of like how Feral is looking in its talents, and what things have maybe shifted and changed that we can consider. So first of all, I know people aren't very happy with the class tree. I won't go into that too much, but just say, for me, I feel like I can get a lot of the things that I want to get in general. So I'm making do and I'm working with it. Right now, with the build I'm playing, obviously we can change things as and when we need to, but right now I'm getting most of my defensive strength on the left-hand side of this tree. I'm then coming down the right-hand side. I'm running Dispel in most scenarios. I think in Raid we might want it on some stuff, but definitely in Mythic Plus we're going to. There's an Affix which we'll want to Dispel. There are multiple dungeons like Stone Vault with a lot of curses. There's City of Threads with some poison stuff. Like, there's a lot of Dispel opportunities in these dungeons, so running Dispel is important. Also running like Vortex, being able to pick up Cyclone right now is really awesome. I actually love that. Has a lot of play in Mythic Plus. And so I'm really happy with being able to get Cyclone again. And then I'm actually running, in this particular build I'm actually running Lore of the Grove, which is going to get me increased Moonfire damage. So I'll talk about that more when we get into the spec tree. But for this build, I'm running Lore. If I wasn't running this build, then I could get those 2 talent points back and invest it in, I don't know, Stamp and some more defenses or something like that. So the class tree, in general, I feel like I can get a lot of the stuff that I want. Just keep in mind, Astral Influence no longer works for Feral Druid range. So that extra 5 yards doesn't work. On the Spec tree, I'm playing my favorite talent setup. This involves having every single bleed and every single dot available to you, more or less. The only thing I'm missing here is Feral Frenzy. But it's Double Clawed Rake, it's Lunar Inspiration, it's Adaptive Swarm with Unbridled, it's Circle of Life and Death, it's Apex, Berserk, and then Convoke. So it's like every bleed. So that's really what I'm leaning into, is just having a lot of periodic effects running and just having a lot of dots and spinning plates going on. It is definitely not going to be the highest DPS build in certain dungeons. In some dungeons it might be. Smaller mob density, maybe something like Mist of Turner Scythe, it'll be quite strong, where you're only doing 4 or 5 mobs at a time. And it's good on like a lot of the bosses. The first boss in particular, if you could be Moonfiring, you get the extra damage there, it's quite strong. It's doing about 8% of my single target, which is really good. So I'm liking this build. It's very fun to play. Even in AoE, it's good. But it's not going to be as good as just like, you pull in 20 mobs, you're not going to be using Lunar Inspiration. But I'm finding it very, very fun. Right now, Convoke is really good compared to Incarnation. So keep that in mind. I don't know any builds right now that are running Incarn. But maybe you can experiment and find something there. Apart from that, that's kind of just the play of the build, so I'm really enjoying it. Now, when it comes to this build, if you like the idea of it, but you don't really want to play LI because it just sounds a bit too hectic, no worries. You can drop that and pick up MOC instead, or you can pick up Taste for Blood, whichever you sort of like prefer, or, you know, you can sim that, whatever you want to do. You can even drop Unbridled if you really want to and pick up double CI. I personally prefer Unbridled, especially with us no longer having Predator that, like, gives us free Tiger Furies. I think the potency of CI is now not going to be as good, and I really like the idea of just having a lot of bleed damage and periodic damage, so I much prefer playing this build right now, but you can definitely make those changes. Another interesting talent that I want to talk about is Raging Fury and Tiger's Tenacity. So Raging Fury just gives us 5 extra seconds of Tiger Fury, which I think right now is pretty good, and I've actually been experimenting with playing both of these in this build. And I'm actually starting to favor a bit more Raging Fury because of this additional 5 seconds of Tiger Fury. Getting a 20-second Tiger Fury window every 30 seconds just makes it feel like way more of my bleeds are in a snapshot window where I'm getting that increased 15% damage from Tiger Fury. So I'm finding that more beneficial. I'm seeing on the meters it seems to be doing quite well. You also have Tiger's Tenacity, which is increasing all your periodic effects, as well as Moonfire by 10%. So I really like this idea as well. And in some dungeons, I will run this. But I am enjoying Raging Fury at the moment. Apart from that, picking up Vein Ripper now instead of Rip and Tear is probably something quite significant here. We just want longer lasting bleeds because we no longer have Tear Open Wound. So this is really important. Whether you're playing Druid of the Claw, whether you're playing Wildstalker, you're probably going to want to run Vein Ripper if you are running this node. You're not going to run this node in every single build. Sometimes you're going to go double Saberjaws. But if you are running this node, Vein Ripper is really good because now you refresh your Primal Wrath less often, which means more bites, which means more Rampant Frosty damage, which means more cleave, more AoE. It's really good stuff. Apart from that, if you aren't aware, Apex now does like less damage, or it's less likely to proc in AoE compared to how it used to. It's more likely to proc in fewer target scenarios. So Apex is still a good choice to run. It's obviously going to be really good with Rampant Frosty and these Blood Vine explosions and stuff. So that's the build. Those are the talents. This is how it's playing. And yeah, for me, it's really, really good fun. This is my favorite build right now. Like I say, if I really just want to chill, I can like drop LI and then just run that. And it's business as usual. So yeah. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't really play too much Druid of the Claw, so I don't have, like, some fun, wacky builds or anything like that, really, for this. At its core, you're just going to be looking to bite as much as you can, so bite damage is going to be really good. Having things like Apex, having Rampant Ferocity, maybe grabbing Taste for Blood could be good. These sorts of things are going to be good. You're just going to be emphasizing your bite damage. Still running Convoke and Berserk is really good as well. But there's definitely going to be some variance in where you can fill in the rest of these slots in terms of talents. You could grow double CI. I think there's probably some builds that are running double Saberjaws as well. So there's definitely movement here on Druid of the Claw. You can make some changes. But yeah, that's kind of the playstyle. You're just looking to emphasize your bites a lot. I'll briefly take you guys through some of our abilities and how they work, a quick TLDR, and then we'll jump into more like rotational overviews here. So I'm going to be playing this build, the one that I've been showing you. This is the one I find most fun, so this is just the one I'm going to show off in this video. I'm not saying by any means that it's the best talent build at all. Do not take that as it being the best one. Just one I'm enjoying. Okay, so how do our abilities work? So, at its core, Feral Druid is a combo point generating, energy using class or spec. So we have finite energy. We want to use it as efficiently as possible to maximize the amount of finishers that we can use, and also make sure that our combo point generating abilities are intelligently used or decided upon. We have a couple of cooldowns. We have Tiger Fury, which is a 30-second cooldown. That, to me, is our main cooldown. We have Berserk, which is a 2-minute, and we have Convoke, which is a 2-minute. So Convoke and Berserk line up very, very well. You want to make sure that before you ever Berserk or Convoke, that you're going to Tiger Fury first. You want to make sure that your bigger cooldowns are inside that Tiger Fury window of 15 to 20 seconds, or 15 to 20 seconds or so. So that's the kind of the core of our cooldowns and how they're working. In terms of our actual generators and spenders, we have Shred, which is a high energy cost single target ability, but it hits pretty heavy on single target. We have Rake, which is a slightly cheaper single target ability that puts a bleed on the target and also does a little bit of initial damage. Now, you can take a talent, Double Clawed Rake, which makes Rake hit 2 targets instead of 1. Think of it as Twin Moons for Balanced Druid. This is really awesome. I love Double Clawed Rake. I think it's actually fantastic. And I really wish that Wildstalker, the tree here, would make it so that Moonfire hit 2 targets. That would be really, really, really cool as well. I would love that playstyle. Then we have Thrash, which is a very expensive AoE bleed that doesn't really do too much damage, but if it gets its full duration, it does a decent amount. But it's only like worth what, a couple % of your overall when you're looking at the actual, damage breakdown. Okay, this is probably not very representative because this isn't a complete dungeon run. This is only up to like the second boss, I think. But normally its damage isn't very good. It's 3-ish, 4% of your overall. Then you have Brutal Slash, which is a very cheap, all things relative. It's a very cheap energy cost ability. And it hits everything in AoE, and it's really good on single target. Some people don't use Brittle Slash on single target, which is a big misplay. It does very good damage on single target and on AoE, especially for its energy cost. Because that's what you got to think about as well, is not just the amount of damage that the ability does, but its energy cost attachment. Like if something does a lot of damage, but it's a really high energy cost, or something does a lot of damage and it's a low energy cost, like, it's a lot better to be running Brutal Slash a lot of the time. So, at its core, Feral Druid, if you're running Blood Talents, which most of the time you're going to be, you're wanting to do 3 different combo point generating abilities very often within a 4-second window in order to get an increased damage for our Rip or our Ferocious Bite. So you're, in general, like, say in AoE, you're going to be trying to Rake, Thrash, Brutal Slash. You don't really want to be shredding because it's a single target ability. Everything else that I just mentioned hits in AoE. So, in general on AoE, Rake, Thrash, Brutal Slash. Cool. If everything's raked up and you don't need to rake, okay, then you can throw in a shred instead, and you can shred Thrash, Brutal Slash. Just, be intelligent with it. The reason that you want to be using, like, if Thrash is on all the targets, and you can be like, well, I can shred instead of Thrash. Everything's already has Thrash on him. That is true, and you might want to do that at times in AoE, but keep in mind that shred is only going to hit a single target, so it's only got, like, that 1 chance of critting, and depending on your crit chance, it's probably not very likely that it's going to crit, which means we have energy or combo point inefficiency. Whereas if you Thrash instead, you have better combo point efficiency. So that can be good. In terms of single target, you kind of just make one little swap. Instead of Rake, Thrash, Brutal Slash, you're going to Shred, Thrash, Brutal Slash. And it kind of alternates. So you do like Rake, Shred, Brutal. And then on the next go, because you already have Rake, you would Shred, Thrash, Brutal. And then on the next one, well, the next Blood Talents generating window, you would want to probably Shred, Rake, Brutal Slash again. And then on the next Blood Talents generating window, go back to Shred, Thrash, Brutal Slash. So AoE and single target is very similar. You're just making one minor change. But keep in mind your Blood Talents, make sure you're playing around that. because it's going to snapshot your rip. What does snapshotting mean? Snapshotting is when you increase the full duration of a periodic effect in the initial application. So when you have Blood Talons and you then apply a rip, the full duration of that rip is going to be increased by 25%. Now you may have heard snapshotting before and think like, oh, what else has snapshotting? Tiger Fury. Tiger Fury increases your damage dealt by 15% for all of your attacks for their full duration. So if you have 2 seconds left on Tiger Fury and you manage to put on a 5 combo point rip on the target, it's going to tick for its full 24-second duration as if Tiger Fury is still active for that full 24 seconds, even though it was only active for 2 seconds of its duration. You know what I mean? So snapshotting is very important to Feral and very core. And right now, the only things that you need to worry about snapshotting are your rip and your rake and your Moonfire. Everything else is dynamic. Oh, well, Thrash you don't really care about because it's like more of a facilitator of your Blood Talons and stuff like that. And it's low damage, so it's kind of insignificant. But if you can snapshot it, go for it. Adaptive Swarm is dynamic. So Adaptive Swarm you can put your bleed on the target and then Adaptive Swarm, and it will increase the damage of the bleed after the fact. So you don't need to worry about Adaptive Swarming and then applying all of your bleeds. That would be crazy. So yeah, that's how the deal is with like snapshotting and applications of bleeds and stuff. In terms of your finishes then, so Rip is your core finisher. Like on your overall, you might look at it and go like, oh, but like Bite's doing so much damage compared to Rip or something like that. But no, I mean, even in this scenario, Rip is still higher. But per use or per application, you might have that idea of like, oh, is Rip even very good? Yes, you want Rip on the target at all times, because whilst it's ticking over the course of 24 seconds, you could be squeezing in those bites. It's also, for Wildstalker, going to be spawning vines on things, so it's very, very important. Now, on single target, you're going to use your Rip. On AoE, 2 or more targets, you're going to use Primal Wrath. What's the difference? Not much. They're both the same ability. Rip is just twice the duration as Primal Wrath, but doesn't do any initial damage. And it's also 5 energy cheaper. So in single target, Rip is absolutely your priority because it lasts twice as long as Primal Wrath Rip, which means you can do more bites. Primal Wrath is better on like 2 or more targets because it's going to do initial hit damage to both targets or more. And then it's also going to apply both your bleeds immediately, which again is going to be really good if you're running Wildstalker. And even if you're not, it's still going to be really good. But it means both targets are bleeding immediately, and then you can start to get things like Apex procs, because the more rips you have on targets, the more chance you have of getting your Apex, which means more bites, which means more rampant ferocity damage. Like it all leads into that, and it's all works well together there. So single target, you're ripping. Whenever Rip is on the target and you don't need to refresh it, you're biting. Whenever you're in 2 or more targets, you're going to Primal Wrath. Whenever Primal Wrath isn't in danger of dropping off, then you Ferocious Bite. Very, very simple. And then outside of that, if you're running Adaptive Swarm, you're just going to be looking to use Adaptive whenever you can, like whenever it's up. Now, in very large AoE, I wouldn't use Adaptive. I would do it before the pull, and I would do it at the end of the pull when things are starting to die. Like, you know, you've got a couple mobs left and they're all sub 10% health. Like, you can start setting up for the next pull and start using your Adaptive and stuff like that. If you're on 10, 15 mobs or something, don't Adaptive Swarm. Because, unless you're like energy starved, because it's just inefficient. Adaptive Swarm it takes a long time to get up and running. Like, it's a slow burner, so you want it pre-established. You don't want to be doing it like mid-pull. There are better things to be doing. By the time Adaptive Swarm really ramps up, the pack's already going to be dead. So you kind of want to use it before the pull and at the end of the pull, not during. Okay, so let's jump into some rotations. I'm just going to show you the Wildstalker rotation and the rotation that I'm using for this build, just to give you a general sense of how Feral Druid is playing. If you have any questions in the comment, like, just leave them in the comment section or come join my stream and ask those questions. I'll be more than happy to help you with this stuff. So when it comes to Feral Druid, we always want to try and start from Stealth. The reason being it's going to increase our initial ability from Stealth, either Rake or Shred, by 60%. Rake is going to be the priority of what you want to use here. A, it stuns the mobs for a few seconds. And B, it does, it's going to hit 2 targets if you're running double clawed rake, which means it's going to be a good combo point generator. It's also going to have it's a 60% damage increase to 2 targets. That's really, really good. And yeah, so you wanted to be doing that from stealth. Now, another thing you want to be doing is Tiger Furying, because Tiger Fury is going to increase the damage for the full duration of that ability. So you get 60% damage increase, and then you get a 15% damage increase from the Tiger Fury. So it's really strong to be able to do a Tiger Fury stealth rake. Now, after that, I'm going to be trying to generate my Blood Talons, which is 3 different combo point generating abilities within 4 seconds. So, if I can rake, then Moonfire, then Thrash, I should be close to 5 combo points here, and I should be able to then Primal Wrath, and then look to get into my Berserk Convoke window. I may do a few extra steps here, so just keep an eye on it, but that's the core of what I'm trying to do. Rake from stealth, generate 5 combo points as quickly as possible, use Primal Wrath. Then, I want to try and get into my cooldown window quite quickly. So, I'm going to pre-adaptive swarm, I'm going to stealth, I'm going to wait a few seconds, okay. Tiger Fury Rake, Moonfire, Thrash, Berserk, Primal Wrath. I'm going to Brutal Slash. I'm going to bite once. Now I'm going to Convoke. When I come out of this Convoke, I'm going to bite. I'm going to Brutal Slash. Okay, I got Blood Talons. Great. Reapply Primal Wrath. I'm going to Rake. Thrash. I can do another couple Moonfires here. I'm going to re-Primal Wrath. Moonfire. Re-Rake here. Bite on the Vine. I can Adaptive. I'm going to Thrash. I can bite, Moonfire, Moonfire, Moonfire. I can re-primal. I can double rake, so it applies to all 3 targets. Generate Blood Talons there. I'm just holding. I'm very energy starved right now, so I'm just holding. I'm not going to try and bite, because I can just fish for bites with Apex. Whereas if I get a non-Tiger Furied Primal Wrath, that's going to be really hurting. If I have the choice to get it during that window. Now, I can just let Primal Wrath drop off here. Wait for my Tiger Fury to come back up. A couple Moonfires. Re-Primal Wrath. Drop some Moonfires. Brutal Slash. Re-Primal Wrath. I can Thrash here. Brutal Slash. Re-Rake. Moonfire there. And a Primal Wrath in just on the buzzer there. Re-Adaptive Swarm. Apex Bite. I can Moonfire. So that's kind of the rotation you're trying to do. Obviously, you're trying to bite these Bloodvine targets as much as you can. As you can see, it's very hectic. This build is definitely more of like an advanced build. You can make it a lot simpler by just removing Lunar Inspiration, and instead of LIing, you're just looking to Rake, Thrash, Brutal Slash. That's it. You don't have to change too much there. You're trying to Tiger Fury pretty much on cooldown because it's 30 seconds. Your Berserk and Convoke are 2-minute cooldowns. So if you hold Tiger Fury mid-combat, it's going to be quite awkward because then you're going to lose. You're either going to lose one or you're going to be holding one for a long time toward Berserk and Convoke refresh window. So yeah, keep that in mind. But that's kind of the general rotation for Feral. You can reapply your bleeds when they are at 30% of their full duration or lower. So Rip is 24 seconds. If you reapply it in under 8-second window, then you're up good. What it does is it takes the final 30% of that bleed and reapplies it to the new bleed, right? So you have this 24-second rip, you reapply a new rip when that first rip is almost over, and it'll increase its duration. So if I show you really quick, so if I apply a 5 combo point rip, it's going to last for 24 seconds. If I then apply another rip right now, it goes up to 32 seconds. So if you apply it under that 30% window, it'll apply to the new bleed, which is really, really good. And again, you can get those rips or those Primal Wraths towards the end of that Tiger Fury window, and you hit that Pandemic on your bleeds, and it's really good. Now, the things you want to worry about Pandemic windows for are your Rake and your Rip. Thrash is a facilitator. It helps you with your Blood Talons in a pinch, and yeah, it's just good for that kind of stuff. So that's the sort of the deal with Feral rotations. I hope this has been helpful for you guys. thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully this has been a good guide and video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section, or better yet, come see me on Twitch, where I'm streaming WoW and Final Fantasy and stuff, and come ask you questions. All right, guys, have a great War Within release, and I'll see you the first week of September. Take care.